I now invite Sarah Hindman to come forward to light the chalice and lead us in our affirmation of covenant, which is printed in your order of service.
We light this chalice today for our children. May this flame remind and encourage us to offer spaces where they are nurtured with patience, care, intention, and creativity, so that they might find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in themselves, so that they might be welcoming to whomever they meet and kind to all living creatures. We light this chalice with remembrance that we are all children on lifelong spiritual journeys. May we, children of all ages, forever embark in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and be illuminated by all those who mother us along the way. Please join me in the affirmation of covenant as printed in your order of service, saying, "Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other."
The author of that reading, Steve Garnes Holmes, is a retired Methodist minister who keeps a blog called Unfolding Light. I like that idea, that light unfolds. Light lets us see what we see, and scientifically speaking, we know that different kinds of light reveal different things. Colloquially, we have the idiom to see something in a new light, meaning to see something in a different perspective. And we might see the light in someone's eyes, which is to see something that is not light, but an emotional state, or perhaps a light of recognition or of learning. But we also speak of insight, which requires not light, but imagination. To see what we had not seen before, or to see what remains unseen. To see with the mind what our eyes cannot see. In that short poem, he distinguishes between his visible hands and their invisible history. He notes that the whole body is present in the hand, that his tiny self contains the heart of creation, and that the DNA of the universe is present in his very cells. I am, he says with Walt Whitman, the song that contains the world, as we all are. When he feels small, he can look at his hands and know his connection with life and all that is. I am vast, he says, if I listen. The whole mystery in the word of me, evoking those mysterious first lines of John's Gospel, "In the beginning was the Word," as if to say that mystery also is in me. In these brief lines, he brings together mysteries examined by science with those illumined by religious symbols, letting the lamp of knowledge and the spark of imagination reveal the many facets of our unseen interdependence. Science and religion are not so different. They each try to shine a light on a mystery and then imagine a story that accounts for what they've seen. And each in its sphere serves to guide our understanding. The hardest trick in each is to shed light on invisible mysteries. The more complex the thing we are trying to see, the more symbols we need in order to conjure it. That's why most sciences, and certainly theology, at a certain level become difficult to grasp, obscure, esoteric, at a remove from common experience. It's not only imagination that's needed to see the unseen, but memory. Sometimes we shape our understanding of unseen things through stories, and sometimes by systems of symbols. The ancient Greeks cultivated an art of memory where they would imagine a furnished room or a little museum of objects that served as mnemonics for the ideas that they wanted to convey. A walk through that imaginary room or little museum was like walking through an outline from point to point, A, B, and C, or 1, 2, and 3. Mathematics is a system of symbols for complex ideas, and there's a similar system for analyzing logic. All these ways of seeing the unseen, first of all, are of naming and knowing. We define our symbols, and then they're systems of remembering. I started reflecting again on this business of seeing the unseen when a friend of mine, a colleague who likes to read tarot cards, recommended a book to me called 78 Acts of Liberation, Tarot to Transform the World. It was published last year. Now, I'm not a practitioner of tarot reading. For me, the tarot is interesting as art, and you will not be surprised to learn, as history. Art is one of the few avenues we have for insight into how people thought about things in the past. It's one of the few breaks we can apply when we are tempted to project modern sensibilities onto our ancestors or Western attitudes onto non-Western people. The tarot is very interesting that way. And my introduction to that aspect of tarot was a lecture Joseph Campbell gave in 1987, shortly before he died. You can find that lecture on the Pathways podcast, and the same material is in a book of interviews with him titled The Hero's Journey. Campbell told the same stories over and over. You can find this probably in more places too, because they were his mnemonics. They were his way of teaching. So when he talked about tarot, he talked about Dante. The earliest surviving tarot deck was printed in southern France in 1392. It's called the Marseille deck. And 1392, that was about 70 years after Dante's death. So it's fairly close to him in time and culture. And Campbell shows in that lecture that the same worldview and symbols that Dante worked with show up in the art of that early tarot deck. I gave you an insert in your order of service to give you a sense of what he talked about. Don't worry, I'm not going to go too deep in the weeds. But this is the way Campbell laid out the cards. That's what I want you to see. You might know that the tarot is 2 decks of cards put together. One deck resembles modern playing cards, and the other deck is of 22 numbered cards called trumps, or if that label is triggering in any way, they are also called the major arcana. He put those 22 in 4 columns of 5, as you see there, in numerical order. So card number 1 is to the lower left of the table, and card number 0 is in the upper right. They're numbered 0 to 21, not 1 to 22. The 4 columns are Dante's categories of the stages of life: youth, maturity, age, and old age. Campbell said old age, Dante said decrepitude. For Dante, the first half of life was about developing your social character and duties and responsibilities, and the second half was about becoming aware of your spiritual character, which had been developing right along. But in age and old age, you have more time to reflect on it and more experience to reflect on. And then Campbell started to notice a correspondence of the 5 rows to the same categories of personal development. At the bottom, the cards are about engaging the world. And at the top, they're about detachment from it and being able to step back and see the world in a way you can't when you're so socially engaged and involved in it. And indeed, the card at the upper right side of the table, number 21, is the world. At the end, you see it for what it is. Now, Lane Smith, the author of 78 Acts of Liberation, a tarot to transform the world, strongly critiques this approach to tarot in several ways. One is historical. He is convinced that ever since 1910, when Arthur Waite published his best-selling version of the tarot deck, that popular understandings of tarot have suffered. Smith's main critique is class-based. Arthur Waite was part of the English leisure class circle of intellectual mystical dilettantes who belonged to the order of the Golden Dawn. Smith regards them as privileged appropriators of an ancient art of divination, utterly out of touch with why people turned to divination in the first place. For Smith, who self-describes as a white, transgender, genderqueer, or non-binary queer, middle-aged, single parent of 2 young children living under the poverty line, holding privileges associated with whiteness and adjacency to masculinity, and a longtime member of a large socialist organization, divination is about having some sense of your own power in a world stacked against you. He's equally critical of the ways Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung interpreted tarot, which he characterizes as inwardly focused and individualistic. Furthermore, Smith wants to use the tarot to read the power dynamics that are at play in our world, that is, as a tool for social justice work. This is why my friend recommended that I read his book for its social justice perspective. Now, Joseph Campbell was equally critical of Arthur Waite because despite the traditional numbering of the cards, Waite swapped 2 of them. He moved number 8, the Justice card, and made it number 11 and put number 11, called either Strength or Force, back at number 8. He gave no reason. He simply said that this is where those cards belong and that he couldn't say why without revealing a mystic secret that he was not allowed to divulge. Campbell's complaint was that when you do that, you ruin the pattern that fits so neatly with Dante's life stage categories. That is, you put the worldview of the 14th century out of focus. A lot of Lane Smith's criticisms of Joseph Campbell show that he has not actually read much of Campbell's work, but this point is the most telling. Smith uses Arthur Waite's ordering of the tarot cards, but he does it for his own reasons. He says he wants to put the Justice card at the center. He wants to put the Justice card in the center in his reading of the tarot, reading it for insight into the power dynamics at play in our world. So he removes card 0, the Fool card, which Campbell placed at the top right outside the table, to correspond to the second naivete in the second half of life, symbolically removing the individualistic reading from his table. Campbell would say that the Fool is the one who goes through marches the path along through the 22 cards, and that's an individual experience, and Smith wants to take that out, and so he literally takes the card out. So now, taking that card out, he has a deck of 21 cards, and with an odd number of cards, there is now a card at the center. And using Waite's ordering, that card is number 11, the Justice card. Justice is at the center, literally, of his layout. The rest of Smith's scheme is interesting and creative. Instead of envisioning the cards as a time sequence, he imagines them as a landscape. At one place, there is the threshold from which we enter and relate to that landscape of the world. At the far end is the horizon. This is the other side of your insert. And justice is at the center in the inner circle, inside circle there. Now, unfortunately, when I made the insert, I kept the cards in their original order, so strength is at the center rather than justice, but they came out so small we can pretend, can't we? Now, Smith then uses some creative numerology to create correspondences between the nearer and farther cards in between the threshold, center, and horizon of his landscape. By adding the digits until you're down to one digit, you can reduce the cards to groups of 2 or 3. So you end up with 3 groups of 3 and 6 groups of 2 cards. The cards at the threshold are numbers 1, 2, and 3. At the center are 10, 11, and 12, which when you add their digits reduce to 1, 2, and 3. 1 plus 0 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, right? And at the horizon are 19, 20, and 21. 1 plus 9 is 10, which reduces to 1. 2 plus 0 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 6 groups of cards are in between. The cards in each pair are on opposite sides of the center. So, for example, 4 is paired with 13 because 1 plus 3 is 4, and so on. To each of these groups of 2 or 3, Smith assigns a value or aspect of justice work, including initiation, alignment, care, resistance, struggle, repair, adjustment, endurance, realization, and the same for each card. So, he creates constellations of values and aspects of social justice work to contemplate. So as an illustration, let me just read you a few of the pairs on either side of the center. The first in each pair is a personal action, the second, a collective one. Set boundaries, expose the rot. That's the Emperor card, setting boundaries, death, exposing the rot. Embody spirituality, think both and. That's the Pope, embodying spirituality, and temperance, both and. Prioritize relationships, break entrenched patterns. That's the Lovers, prioritizing relationships, and the Devil, breaking entrenched patterns. Internally self-regulate. Boy, does an activist need to do that, right? Internally self-regulate and also cause a disruption. That's the collective action. This is the chariot. This is right out of Plato, the chariot driver in control of those horses. Internally self-regulate, and then the tower is a long time symbol of breaking up something that's set. Cause a disruption. So you see what he's doing. He's spinning the symbols of the tarot to match an aspect of his experience in social justice work. In this frame, reading the cards with justice at the center is about relating the things closer to you at the threshold, your personal actions, to more distant or bigger picture things at the horizon, the collective action, and that can be harder to see, that perhaps are actually hidden or unseen. Instead of spiritual life, the higher numbered cards represent collective life, a thing less visible, if at all, to one trying to hold it all together day by day in a hostile world and still do one's part. It's still using the tarot for learning and reflection, striving to see the unseen, but in a different frame. If you want to dive deeper into this, you know what to read. 78 Acts of Liberation, Tarot to Transform Our World. But the takeaway for this morning is we work with old symbols, perhaps outdated, perhaps biased, all the time. We inherited them. They compose our culture. But our life experience provides the frame in which we contemplate them. And we have the option and the agency, perhaps the necessity, to reframe those symbols in ways that are meaningful and useful to us. We might reframe familiar symbols to understand our personal past, or we might do it to imagine a better collective future. So what hand were you dealt? And what's in the cards for us all? May our individual and collective discernment be free, imaginative, and full of both memory and unfolding light. And may we each, in some fashion, see the unseen all around us. Amen.
I invite Sarah back up to extinguish our chalice. Please join in saying our closing words, which you will find printed in your order of service. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings.
And may we better understand the unseen in our lives.